It's time for my virtual Jericho with John Mayer.
Hello and welcome to a very, very special My Jericho. Today is D-Day for Walton Street. After nearly 24 months of closure, the County Council is today making their minds up about what to do. Will the barrier stay? Will it go? Councillor Constance has to make that decision, hopefully just after 11 o'clock. Before that, she's got 31 people. Maybe we should see who they are, who all want to speak. 31 people, yes, and they're each going to get 2 minutes, and we might put a clock on them. So there we are. Those are the runners and the riders, and look at those numbers again, 31. But she will have to decide what to do at the end of all that. After that, we're going to come back to 6 or so key players and say, what do you think? What decision was? They'll either be crying or celebrating. First of all, we've got some of them here already. Ken Paul from Jericho Connections. What are you expecting?
Councillor Constance hasn't always gone with the recommendations from the officers. I think it's hard to predict where we'll end up at the end of the day. I believe, based on the conversations we've had with councillors and the council officers, she can only make one of 2 decisions, open or close. We're hoping for an open.
Okay. Stephen Brown from Save Jericho LTN, which represents residents in South Walton Street. What are you hoping for?
Good morning, everyone. Well, like Ken, I've honestly got no idea what the decision is going to be. When I first got actively involved in this sorry saga, back in August, I didn't expect Councillor Constance to effectively override her officer's recommendation to keep the filter in place. So, to be honest, I just don't know. You asked me earlier what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for some sort of filter, preferably not the bollards that we presently got, to be retained until some future point whereby we have what I think many people would regard as a proper LTN proposal, or a zero emission zone, or connecting Oxford, or something else in place that would add greater benefit to all concerned and meet all the different conflicting interests. But until that happens, our view is that the filter should stay.
You, Alice, you live in Observatory Street, which is one of the feeder streets in and out. What do you hope is going to happen?
Well, one of the major things I hope they will do is something about large vehicles in Observatory Street. Last weekend, somebody did £1,000 worth of damage to us, and it must have been a large vehicle, not knowing that it was even doing it. And that's not uncommon now since the barrier was in place. I'm in favour of them removing the barrier and then putting in lots of traffic calming measures. 20 roundels, reminding people that it's 20 mph speed limit. Even you, John, weren't fully aware that it was a 20 mph speed limit in Walton Street. Reminding them of that frequently down the street would cost almost nothing. I mean, I'd be prepared to bring my own big pot and do it, so to speak. And that would be a start of traffic calming.
Let's look forward a bit to an hour's time. Ken, if she decides to leave the barrier in place, what's Jericho Connections going to do then?
So I think we will continue to campaign for an equitable traffic distribution, which is something we don't have right now.
And what forms will that campaign take?
So I think we'll need to see whether there is another experimental traffic order, whether this is a permanent decision to put the barrier in place, which I think is the only decision she can make. If she wants to, she can't say I'm going to extend it, unfortunately. That isn't an option. So the only decision she can make is open or close. If she went with closed, then it would be unfortunate because we'd have to launch a whole campaign to challenge what would now be a permanent decision.
And what about any of the others? If she decides to open the barrier, what are you going to do?
So we would like to have seen traffic calming. We'd have liked to see the shortcuts displaced and there be no shortcuts, and Jericho always to be the long way round to anywhere else. But the budget will have gone by then, John, because in their council report they're going to give it to Cowley.
The £52,000 is going to Cowley, is it?
Yeah.
So Jericho gets zilch.
Yep.
Right. Any reaction from anybody else to that? There's no money whatsoever for anything.
Indeed, I think this is the
Constance.
indeed. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Hugh. Indeed, I think
go
this
on.
is the tragedy of the whole thing. I mean, you asked the question if the decision is to retain the filter in some way. I think any short-term elation will be dampened by the fact that it's not necessarily the right solution for everyone in the area. We have always argued that more needs to be done to deal with the issues, as you, for example, has been talking about, particularly in Observatory Street, but also further north in the Walton Manor area, and particularly in St Bernard's Road. We were quite annoyed, I think is the right expression, when nothing was absolutely done. Indeed, we were somewhat bemused when we've had almost 2 years of these 3 lines of plastic bollards sort of defacing the community. The things might have been very different if a little bit of thought had been set up and better signage to still encourage people that life was still happening in Jericho and businesses still existed, and that instead of it appearing like a bit of a war zone, frankly.
Okay, right. Let's. D-Day is here. It's now 10:02.
Yeah.
I assume Councillor Constance has started a meeting.
Okay.
She has to listen to 31 people. Sit back and enjoy it. We'll see you in an hour and a half's time for your reaction.
Thanks, John.
Perhaps we can go over now to the County Council.
Right, I think we have heard from everybody. I have considered views from everybody, and David Palmer is asking to be admitted. Is he a speaker still waiting to be heard?
David Palmer is here for one of the Henley items.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think it is time for me to try to sum up the position here and to make a decision. The first thing I want to do is thank everybody for the time and the attention, the trouble to make extremely good, extremely persuasive submissions this morning. And all of you were within the 2-minute deadline. I don't think anybody had to be reminded, which was a very effective, most effective run of speakers I think I have probably ever heard. And you are all right. Whichever way I decide today is going to be a really very hard decision. Just for background, absolutely right to remind me that I have stated and remain hugely committed to low traffic neighbourhoods, and you know that we are introducing them under ETROs in the Cowley area with ambitions to trial them in other areas as well. You know also that it was and it remains my huge interest for the Jericho Walton Street area to establish a satisfactory low traffic neighbourhood. And the last time I made a decision on this to keep the barrier up was specifically to make a bid for funding in order to design and consult on a possible low traffic neighbourhood for this area. Sadly, as you have heard today, opinion locally has absolutely divided, and officers have come. It's not just a numbers game. The opinions are as forcefully expressed on from both points of view. Those who are in favour of the barrier are quite right. It does result in a very much more enjoyable neighbourhood. much more. I can see that, and I would yearn for that for all you residents. But it imposes an unfair and unbalanced burden of additional traffic on smaller side streets, which has been, and some streets in particular, which has been well expressed this morning. There is no way that officers can read a local support for a scheme locally. I have to sympathise. I have to recognise their conclusion that there is no local support for a scheme. That doesn't mean there can't be one. And I have been hugely impressed by some of the speakers today who have urged those in different camps at the moment to come together to recognise that there must be a way to share the burden in the Walton Street, Jericho area. I do see that as a difficulty, but not insurmountable. And there may be a fairly simple scheme. I had every hope that the funding we found would deliver one. I am sad to say I think it has not done so. I very much recognise the regret expressed by a number of speakers about how this constant experimenting, testing, trialling, piloting, changing, amending, putting up notices that are ignored by motorists, how much it has frustrated the neighbourhood and just how much it has divided the neighbourhood. And I see no gain in that. I will make a decision today to remove the barrier. There are two decisions, actually, that I have to make today. One has to be made today because the experimental traffic order on the barrier expires on the 17th of May. This is the last opportunity for this cabinet member to meet, to make a decision in respect of that barrier. The option open to me is either to allow it to run its course on the 17th of May or make it permanent. And I cannot make it permanent. It's too divisive. It has not sufficient local support, and it imposes burdens on people who are not at this stage prepared to accept them. The other decision is whether to proceed with the area pilot, the LTN area pilot, which was consulted in March. And I must share the officers' view that those opposing increased in the consultation summing up. But I do recognise that numbers of people who opposed that design, that offer, actually wanted a much more effective scheme, which I think remains the possibility for your area. I think it's possible for the community to come together, and I do suggest to you that that's exactly how we got to a successful design and plan for the county area. Those schemes are now introduced. They will, I expect, to run the full 6 months. They impose displaced traffic on surrounding streets, and we will have to consider that very carefully when that comes up for review. But those communities all got together, and the proposal came from the community up rather than a decision, an installation, a project imposed by the county council. And I offer you that for your consideration. I have listened carefully. I have watched officers work thoroughly and carefully through hundreds of communications, set up workshops, consulted and considered. They've adapted plans, responded to residents' groups and to the traders, and still there is no consensus. So I must agree that we must develop a scheme which is deliverable and has broad consensus of support in this area. So I must decide that the barrier will be allowed to run its course. It will terminate on the 17th of May, and we will not proceed with the LTN area pilot. A couple of other comments I do want to make. There has been a recognition by speakers of the impact of the outside the area schemes, the zero emission zone and Connect Oxford. I think they do recognise, numbers of the speakers recognise that will clearly deliver a benefit for the Walton Street, Jericho area, but they are a way off. There is even a suggestion that I should make the barrier permanent, with an understanding that it's simply removed when those schemes come into being. I don't think that's an option open to me. I think the experimental order is either made permanent or allowed to run its course. The zero emission zone we expect to introduce across the city centre by spring next year, and Connecting Oxford Congestion Management Project is at the moment timed for 23-24. When we still plan a bus gate somewhere between High Bridge Street and Walton Street. Those will clearly make an impact, and a beneficial impact on the area. More rapidly, we may have the opportunity to enforce traffic schemes. I want particularly to emphasise that proposed national amendments will allow local traffic authorities to enforce moving traffic restrictions later this year. There have been many of you who thought, as I did, I hoped we would be able to put up a camera and enforce the comings and goings for this whole area by admission of those who had business in the area, and exclude those who would use it as a through route. We have no power to use a camera at the moment. We could use it only if it were a bus route, and it is not a bus route. We are waiting for the extension of powers under, I believe it's called the Traffic Management Act 2004, Part 6, which we have great ambitions and great hopes will reach the outside London traffic highway authorities later this year. This is not the only scheme that is waiting for that opportunity. And I am hopeful that will assist. The possibility of improving the speeding problem, if there is one, and I don't really hear speeding has been an issue, but we are also intending to make a speed watch program available in the next administration.
Right. Yeah. Now they're talking about all these.
Thank you. There are prospects that powers for councils to enforce will be extended, and that will make new opportunities possible. And I would encourage the groups in this neighbourhood to consider perhaps developing an agreed scheme to come back to discuss with the council a way of introducing a scheme that works for everybody in that area. Thank you all for your time and attention. It has been a real struggle. It was a scheme started with every good intention and every ambition to improve both air quality, congestion, active travel, all the benefits that can come from a scheme of this type. But it imposed burdens on streets that are not prepared to take it. Thank you all. We will perhaps meet again. Thank you.
Okay, there we are. That's Councillor Constance has delivered her verdict on on Walton Street. The barrier will come up on May the 17th. The street will be open again to two-way traffic. She sees no reason for the barrier still to stay. She thinks she wants the community to get together to try and come up with an LTN scheme sometime in the future. She wants maybe a bus gate to happen sometime in the future. She wants an emission zone to happen sometime in the future. So there's lots and lots of promises, but the reality will be that in 3 weeks' time there'll be traffic again up and down Walton Street. Now I'm hoping that I'm going to be joined by various people who may have a reaction to that. So we've had 2 hours solid of appeals from various people. We've had 31 speakers, four county councillors, 6 written people wrote in, 5 against, 1 in support, had 41 emails, which 29 were against bringing the barrier up. But, you know, Councillor Constance ultimately makes a decision. She is a political leader. Is there anybody yet online that I can talk to about this all? We got there in the end, technically, and as did the county council, we were able to hear sound and vision right. So, do we have anybody there live yet? Is Stephen Brown there? Do I see? No. Stephen Brown, are you here? Yes. How do you perhaps move yourself more into the centre if you can? How do you feel about that?
Yes, certainly, John. Well, my immediate reaction is obvious disappointment, in a sense not surprise, because I think the writing was on the wall for this sort of outcome, to be honest, once the consultation started on the various options, because there was a big sea change amongst the county council following what I thought was a very constructive and a consensual concerns developing from the workshops that the county organised, and we as a group were certainly privileged to be part of. And I think, like many, I think we were somewhat surprised by the organisation and the content of the consultation. So it was fairly obvious that because there wasn't a serious scheme that could be acceptable to so many different parties, that this is the most likely outcome. We'll continue to work with all other groups, as we have done in the past, to try and develop a compromise situation that the councillor referred to. Just to emphasise the point, I think it's common knowledge, and I think I alluded to it in my comments, that contrary to what some people at the meeting seem to be suggesting, the Save Jericho LTN group clearly, although advocating the temporary retention of the existing filter, have always taken the view, and we have submitted proposals, suggestions, which would involve the partial reopening of the filter to motorised traffic. I want people to make that clear, and we will continue to work with all other groups in developing some sort of a consensual idea. We will also work very hard in continuing to push both the county council and indeed the city council in the development of their ZEZ proposals, the extension of the ZEZ proposals, preferably bring them forward, but certainly not make sure that they get delayed any further than they have already, for all the understandable reasons of COVID and all the rest of it, which has led to this delay.
Okay, thank you. I see Patrick Davies online. Patrick, the champagne must be open in St Bernard's Road this afternoon. Patrick Davies, are you there? Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear and see you. You must be opening
Excellent.
the bottle of champagne.
Thank you.
You've got your way.
Yes, thank you. It is the right decision, but it is a complex decision, and it's very important to realise the nuances of the decision and the disappointment in others, and I understand that disappointment. But of course, at the same time, we are pleased that for the time being, the situation in North Walton Street, which was so eloquently expressed, as well as South Walton Manor and St Bernard's Road, has improved. It was a difficult decision, and I think, you know, it's going to be a mixed response. And I don't think the decision is cause for celebration and champagne. I think that would be entirely inappropriate. But I very much take on board Stephen's view, and I agree that groups getting together and having shared view and understanding and destiny with improved environment, less pollution, and fair share of traffic is the way forward. So I would see this as a marker on the road to a better place for all of us. Thank you.
Do you feel you've got your way? Because you've been banging on for 18 months about St Bernard's Road. Do you feel vindicated?
Well, John, I always love your questions because they always have a deep emotional twist to them. And the answer is, I don't think that is right. In St Bernard's Road, there was pain, and there were many proposed solutions, of which this was only one, and perhaps at the bottom of the list of desirable solutions. So I certainly believe there were other solutions that will work, I think, for everyone, both residents and visitors and businesses. So I'm certainly not going to crow about this at all. I think this has been a difficult decision, and I'd like us to build some form of alliance that takes us all to a good place in the future.
Jamie Hartzell, I see you're online. Are you crying today? Are you ready to kick the cat and Councillor Constance?
It's a pretty strange decision, isn't it? I mean, you know, there was a majority of speakers, councillors, submissions in favour of restricting through traffic. And even Yvonne Constance said she was very committed to low traffic neighbourhoods and everything. And then she's made this decision. And then she's said that she would support something that had some degree of consensus behind it. But she's just thrown that back on the community. She hasn't made any offering to us. You know, they've got £40,000 for developing low traffic neighbourhoods. She said she'd like to see one in the future. Why doesn't she pay for some kind of community facilitator, an independent party, to come in and work with all the groups, you know, and help to bring the community back together? She says, you know, they're stopping any LTN pilot scheme. There hasn't been an LTN pilot scheme, and neither has there been a consultation on a low traffic neighbourhood scheme. All there's been is the barrier, you know, which is definitely one option for a low traffic neighbourhood scheme. But the schemes that were devised were only put to a very small stakeholder group, of which a number of us attended, and were never put to the wider public at all. And the only scheme they put to the wider public was one that everybody felt was inadequate. So, I mean, you know, I think probably where we all agree here is that the council has let us down, but they're continuing to let us down going forward. I mean, I'm sure Ken and others would say, yes, let's get round the table and see if we can come up with something that works for everybody. But I mean, why won't the council support us in the doing of that with some kind of money? We know they've got £50,000 sitting in their coffers for active travel. We know that she's committed to a scheme and wants to develop one. So why don't they chuck £5,000 into a facilitator to make it happen, rather than leaving us, you know, everybody's tainted with some kind of position now. So it's very difficult for us to put that forward. We could have an independent facilitator like Lucy Saunders or somebody who facilitated that other session to do that. And the council has the money to pay for that. You know, we raise money to try and develop an LTN from the community. We can't just keep tapping into the community's pockets to do the council's job for them. They've got the money. They should help us to come to consensus.
You raised your consultant. Do you think you were overreached there? Do you think the waters were muddied by the pedestrianisation plan?
Well, to be honest, John, I don't even know that the council even read that report. You know, we sent it to them. They've never come back to us acknowledging it. They've never come back. Rob said, oh, I need to get around to reading it at some point. He's never come back to us with any kind of reaction. You know, I don't know how it's been for other groups around this table, but the dialogue with the council has been sparse to non-existent. I think we had one call with them in June last year. We agreed at that call to have a follow-on call, and they never did so. I mean, somebody said, or a few people said that, you know, the council is poor on consultation. I mean, it is abysmal the way they're behaving. You know, I don't know what they think, they imagine they're doing, really. I mean, yeah, we raised that money, put forward a scheme. It raised a number of options of what could be done. And they haven't really, they consulted once to a stakeholder group, which Ken and Stephen were involved in. And you know, and then they just completely ignored it and came back with something completely different, which no one was expecting. It wasn't even what Jericho Connections had proposed or anything. It was just completely different and weaker than everything that anybody had said. It's very bizarre.
Now you've got some very clever legal minds in North Oxford. Have you thought about going to law for judicial review of this decision, which you're allowed to do?
Well, you know, I just think, you know, not really, John. You know, I mean, unless people want to do that, you know, but I mean, I'm sure like Bernadette will just be quite happy with where we are. Maybe Ken will be quite happy with where we are and leave it. But, you know, this is not a majority supported decision. I mean, Pip herself said that Jericho Connections has 260 supporters. The Jericho Traders is like 42 businesses. You know, we had a petition with 1,100 people saying they wanted traffic restrictions, and 96% of those were local. How can you deny that? In the speakers, you know, all councillors wanted restrictions. 5 written submissions wanted restrictions, 1 didn't. 33 email submissions wanted restrictions, 8 didn't. 15 of the speakers wanted restrictions, 12 didn't. You know, it's just endlessly, the council has no sense of what a majority is. Now, I can totally accept the position of there needing to be a consensus, and I'm very much with that, and that there is a consensus that needs to be found. But why won't the council support us in delivering that consensus? Because where they're leaving us now, there's going to be a lot of very angry people, and it's not going to help anybody. It's not going to seal divisions. It's not going to bring people back together in any sense. You know, yes, some people are going to be happy, but a lot more people are going to be very unhappy. You know, somebody emailed Yvonne Constance and said, if you remove that barrier, there may well be rioting on the streets. You know, I mean, it's really not a sensible thing to do, to make that decision without injecting any level of support into it, when they do indeed have the money to do so. What are they doing with that money? Just paying.
They're giving it to Cowley, apparently. Let's move on. Is Ken Paul online at the moment? I noticed Bernadette. Is Ken Paul with us yet?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here, John.
Yeah, Ken. Champagne in Jericho tonight. Is it? Are you down the Harcourt Arms celebrating?
I probably will have a pint in the Harcourt Arms, but not to celebrate, but to say, thank God we've actually got somewhere, and there is some decision being made. It wasn't what any of us were expecting, as Jamie has pointed out. You know, we were all blindsided when it came up that they were proposing a reopening. We'd gone in to support what we thought was the best of a decision they could make, which was the partial reopening, because we thought that might achieve an equitable traffic situation for all the streets around Jericho. That they withdrew that, as Jamie has pointed out, and I think, Jamie, I would echo your comments in the Oxford Mail, a farce. As to how we got here. You know, we were consulted on, there was a group of us, Jamie was present, John Howson was present, I think Stephen, you were there, and Patrick, you were there. When we had these consultations, we saw 4 proposals. That wasn't the one that they came up with. They then put that one forward for public consultation. They then withdrew it. So none of us could actually really campaign for anything positive. And Councillor Constance was in a situation, we recognised that, when it came to this decision, that actually she could only make one of 2 decisions. I'm going to reopen this, and then there may be an opportunity to refine it with some traffic calming, or she can say this is going to be permanent. And for us, the worst outcome for us was permanency, which is why we found ourselves in the position we weren't willing to give Councillor Constance in our initial campaign against the original proposal. When we spoke with Rob Freshwater to check what we were giving the right advice to our people, he said Councillor Constance can either go with the partial reopening or she will make her own decision. And that because it was not a 3-way campaign that we could fight for anything else. So as an outcome, it's the best we're going to get. And Jamie, I could see that you've read the report. It was bloody long, but buried in there is the recommendation that I think it's about 40k they've got left, be rediverted to Cowley. So we now don't even get any traffic calming that might have made us, as we've always campaigned, we want to be a destination, but never a shortcut.
Okay, what about Jamie's point that the majority were against lifting the barrier today, and emails and everything and petitions? So,
I think I'm not going to get into a willy waving competition about petitions and the validity of them. I think that's unhelpful. But
willy waving is rather a crude comment to make about just a matter of fact, which is more people support through traffic restrictions than oppose them. I think the question is, do you agree that more people support through traffic restrictions, including Patrick, of course, than oppose them?
So we also support traffic restrictions. What we didn't support was a closure. And of course, we got drawn into the, I think it was unfortunate, Jamie, that we all got drawn into a debate about the full-on pedestrianisation, when we might have had a different debate about how we could calm the traffic, reduce the pressure on Leckford Road, accommodate the needs of South Walton Street. We all got drawn into that, and I think it was probably a distraction.
Okay, Bernadette, did I see your iPhone there somewhere? Bernadette from the traders, are you hearing me? What's your reaction to Councillor Constance's decision?
So, yeah, cautiously, obviously really pleased, because as everyone knows, the road closures had a really terrible impact on the income of most of the businesses. And I say cautiously because obviously there's the ZEZ and the Busgate thing to come along as well, which would also have a terrible impact on the businesses. So yeah, so I am pleased. I feel slightly flat about it, and I'm not sure why. But I think maybe because it's not there's still more to come, and I think this thing is going to keep rolling on for a while, which is a real shame, because we all need to be able to move on as businesses, and it's affecting lots of people's decisions about what to do with their businesses, whether to reopen or whether to reinvest in in things as well.
So is Branca going to now boom, Bernadette? Is it going to be boom time for Branca?
Well, it depends what you mean by boom, because we've got 2/3 of our building which we're paying rent and rates on, but which is currently empty. We are going to be able to reopen the restaurant, but with social distancing, which means and we have also, you probably know, we've got 5 rooms upstairs, which are going to be hotel rooms, or that was the plan. And we'd gone out to tender, and the builders were, sending in their quotes as the road closed, and we had to put the brakes on that because that was going to be funded partly from income from the restaurant, but then that was affected by the road closure, and things were just too unsettled, and we weren't sure of the income, and that was because of the road closure. So just for us, that's something that's happened to us. We're still paying rent and rates on those 5 completely empty rooms, and we're still unsure whether to, COVID or not COVID, whether to go ahead with getting those rooms ready.
So if I'm right, the barrier goes up on the day you're open again the restaurant. Is that correct? The 17th of May.
Yeah, that's a kind of weird coincidence, actually. So that would be, so that's something which will be obviously great for all of the businesses, that it's a big morale boost to have both those things on the same day, yes.
Will you be having a party?
If we've got time to organise one, that's something that actually someone has suggested, that we ought to, do something. But everyone is we're all, honestly all really, really blooming frazzled at the moment with the whole, everyone's having a terrible time, and no one's really sure what's around the corner in terms of another lockdown, perhaps one day. We've been told it won't happen, who knows? So we're all slightly looking over our shoulders and cautious about everything really at the moment.
Now, as you know, we're going to have a bounce back Jericho weekend over the August holiday. Will the traders at Walton join in that? Will you join in the celebration?
I'm actually going to Exmoor that week, but I think it would be really lovely to do something like that. I love a bit of bunting and cake and all those kind of things, and I think that would be a really lovely thing to do. So we ought to have a chat about that and see what we can come up with. But our pavements are really narrow down there, but I know some people have applied for pavement licenses to put tables outside. So perhaps we can do something if that all comes off. I'm not sure how that's going at the moment. Then that might
hang around if you can. Lee, are you on this call as well? What's your reaction to council's decision?
Well, I think what it's shown us is the enormous mistake that was made to retain the barrier when the roadworks were finished, because there was no consultation and it wasn't the right place for a barrier and all the rest of it that we've now discovered. Constance has actually almost admitted that in what she said. Yvonne Constance. What we now need is for time to be spent, firstly to heal the wounds, but then for various schemes to be proposed and properly consulted. And now that COVID restrictions are lifted, what that means is actually going door to door asking people, because half the people of Jericho have not been consulted because they weren't online and the rest of it, they weren't able to be consulted.
Shouldn't the county have done that? Why are you guys doing that? Isn't that the duty of the county or local councils to find out what?
Yes, this is what the council should be doing. Having brought some better ideas together, it should be consulting everybody, not doing this online consulting, which doesn't, as I said, it is very bad in Jericho because of the large numbers of residents that are not able to connect to the internet.
John Howson, are you online with us as well? Is John Howson there? No, John Howson. Not yet. Okay. What did you say, Jamie?
He had to go. I can update on the street licenses if you like.
Go on then, quickly, and then we'll move on to what next.
So three outlets on Walton Street applied for street licenses, taking over the car parking spaces. But the council again hasn't been supportive. They said no decision could be made on that up until after today's decision, and they also said they would charge them some more than £500 a week for the use of each parking space. So basically they just rendered it unacceptable. Of course, it'll be even harder now there's through traffic going through there to do anything. So unfortunately, I think the council's put the kibosh on that as well. So it's quite hard to see how they are also supportive of local businesses. The other thing I want to say is, if Bernadette, I agree with you that this will just rumble on now, for a long time. And although the barriers removed, and that may well be good for the businesses, that we'll see, it's not going to solve the problem. So I wondered if Bernadette, if you're open, sort of getting around the table and having a discussion about, see if we can reach a consensus on the scheme, so that we can.
What next, folks? What next, and who should be the arbiter? Bernadette, any ideas?
Yeah, I don't really know what's next. We're all, I think for us, I've probably said before that we are literally working, 70, 80-hour weeks and getting up at 5, and, we have really long days. And it's really hard for most of us to have any brain space or energy for, for the whole Walton Street thing. It's like James this morning, he had to speak while he was doing someone's haircut. So, I think, and it's, as far as getting around the table is concerned, my kind of primary focus is protecting the businesses. And so I think, in some ways we may be poles apart, but, perhaps there is some kind of, well, there definitely is some common ground. It's just finding it. But I am pretty firm on what I believe is, and we all believe, and, business owners is what we need to do to safeguard our shopping neighbourhood, which was, as we know, it was great before the road closure.
Ken, Paul, any ideas for coming together, consensus?
So I think that is certainly something we should try. I think Bernadette, I understand your position. You probably have the biggest tables and probably the best coffee. So if you would at least lend us a table, that would be cool. I think, speaking to Hugh's comments and also some of Jamie's, I thought it was interesting that Emma Turnbull said that there had been a failure of leadership, yet these were our elected leaders. And they haven't guided us through that. I think the consultant that they used was very helpful. I thought that was a good intervention from the council. But the fact that they then came back with something completely different was just very odd. So I haven't watched your My Jericho video from last night. I think you had some of the councillors who are standing for election on this issue. Let's hope we get some that can show us that leadership.
Same old, same old.
Yeah, I bet. I will watch it, John, but yeah.
I've actually
Yes, I would be very happy to sit down and have a conversation and coffee with any of these.
Okay, Patrick Davey, are you going to be the peacemaker?
I would like to be considered in the role of peacemaker, but I'm not sure I'm a peacemaker. I think Jamie nicely put it that we now all come with a degree of baggage, and to some extent we're all in our bunkers and silos, and we need an independent peacemaker. But I actually very much take on board everyone's views. I mean, certainly Bernadette, my heart goes out to the work and the position and the slightly frazzled feeling, and I absolutely get that. And Ken and Stephen and Jamie, I think there is a future that is different from where we are now, and I do think we can get to a place. If we all compromise a little, we'll all gain a lot, actually. So it is tempting to see this as the end of the road and wish the ZEZ away and Consulting Oxford away. But I really do think we can get to a better place, but it's not going to be easy. And it certainly needs, I think, Jamie's put his finger on it, I think it needs professionals to help us get together, and in a process that could easily take 6 months or a year, but hopefully won't be emotionally challenging. We need to get together, but not in conflict.
Okay, here's an idea, folks. Somerville's a centre of our community. Baroness Jan Royal is lovely and the former leader of the House of Lords. If I can fix it with her that she gives us a room and she chairs a meeting, will you all come to that?
Yeah, but John, I think we just need to, the appointment of a facilitator or a convener needs to be agreed by all parties. It shouldn't be something that anybody just, says, okay, here's the convener, will you all meet? We need to actually agree who should convene. Otherwise we're going to have the same problems all over again. So we shouldn't leap into this too quickly. First of all, there has to be an agreement amongst everybody that they're willing to have a discussion. Then there needs to be a discussion about the terms of reference for that discussion, what we're looking to achieve, who's going to facilitate and everything. And if we can agree on that, then we have a basis for a process. But we all have to agree the basis of the process. It's not helpful for you to come in and say, I can put this person forward, will you come to it? Is it
not, Jamie? I would have thought this is exactly what's needed. We've had enough hot air over the last 18 months.
Well, then you're just ignoring exactly what I just said, is that we all need to agree to come together, and we need to agree between us what that process should be. I've done this many times. We need to agree what that process should be, what the terms of reference are, whether we need a facilitator, who's the best facilitator to have. We come to a collective decision about the process, and everyone buys into the process, and then we conduct it. We don't want individual people popping up saying, I think you should do this. We need to all agree the way forward before, if we're going to have a
bureaucratize it and you kill it. And Stephen Brown,
very supportive. You also said, you said our petition was a dead duck when we launched it, and then it got 1,100 signatures. It's a strange kind
very
of dead
good,
duck.
but it had no effect. Stephen Brown, do you have any?
Neither has anything you've done had any effect either.
Stephen Brown, any views on this?
Sorry, can I just sort of interject a little? I'm not into this blame game business at all. It's not the way I've operated, whether it be publicly or privately, for all my life. In a sense, I think I'm might use the word upset, in the sense that there seems to be this feeling that there's these various different factions that exist within the community. But I would actually like to suggest that I think I'm correct in saying that almost everybody has developed or offered an alternative, to a certain extent significant compromise from where their original, or let's say simplistic, stance might have been. And sadly, that was not effectively taken up by the county council. I've had no serious constructive critical response to the proposals that the Save Jericho LTN group made. We sort of were beginning to get there with the workshops, in the sense that they were led by a apparently neutral facilitator coming up with ideas. But unfortunately, by the time I personally had finished those, I felt that all of this was trying to massage us as folks, to try and get us all to come around to some idea, which isn't quite what we're trying to do. We needed to have spent more time developing where we were at the end of the workshops, and actually coming with the idea, look, this is the situation. This seems to be the consensus about this particular situation. We still got this, we still got that, we still got whatever to sort out, but these are the issues that we now need to do. We are now in a complete and total void, where, with the exception of maybe, and I understand entirely, certain groups, it's patently obvious from the reaction and the speakers at that meeting that the decision that's been made today does not have the widespread support of the Jericho and Walton Manor community. It's as simple as that. That, I think, is a statement of fact. So it behoves on us to try and develop something. But I agree, in the context of what Jamie is saying, is that whoever this facilitator is has got to be someone that is supported by the county council, is supported by whoever the local representatives are after next week, and have clear guidelines, which in a sense was the structure that we had for the workshops, so that we can develop some sort of a consensus, which I'm not persuaded is that distance, actually. I'm not persuaded that there are big gulfs between the various different parties on this, actually.
Ken and Bernadette.
John,
yes, go on.
I've got to go. I'm really sorry, I've got to go now. But thank you very much for hosting this. And I'm sure Ken, let me know how. Is it going to be recorded? Is it being recorded?
It's all recorded and all out there. Now, a very quick question to you, Bernadette. If there's a round table, will Jericho traders come to it?
Yes, of course. Yes, we would do. Yes.
And it may be your round table.
Probably, half a dozen others if they weren't, depending on the time, because some work evenings, as you saw today, James was working. Most people are working really long hours, but I would definitely come, and I'm sure others would as well.
Very good. Thank you for your time. Now, Ken, Paul, if there's a round table, would you come to it?
So I'm handling this on behalf of Pip. So I would recommend to Jericho Connections that we should, but ultimately I've stepped in to help Pip out over the last couple of months, because she's had some other issues that she's needed to attend to. So I wouldn't be able to make that full commitment, but it's certainly a recommendation. And I think, John, I know you know Pip. I would think she would be very reasonable and want to attend.
I'm sure she would. I mean, we've had discussions with her before about doing that, and we made a representation that a group from Jericho Connections should get together with a Duke from the Jericho LTN group. Unfortunately, it was declined at the time. I'm not sure why, but Pip was keen on it, I know.
Yeah, I would expect that to be the outcome as well, Jamie. But I do want to be careful, because I'm only, I stepped in to help Pip out.
You acting. Now, Patrick, Dave, if there was a round table, would you come to it?
Yes, definitely.
Hugh Lee, if there's a round table, would you come to it?
I'd certainly support the idea. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe that's the way forward. I mean, rather than bureaucratize it with constitutions, maybe we should just call a meeting in a neutral place and see who turns up.
I think we should, well, we could do that, but I think we should be moving towards getting an independent facilitator, because I think it'd be quite difficult to, we would need we need facilitation for that process, and it's difficult for any party, I think, to facilitate. Yeah. And I think we should be, maybe that would be the subject for the meeting, should be whether we all agree that we should call on the council to fund an independent facilitator.
That won't happen.
Yeah.
I do think formally the House of Lords is probably quite a good idea.
Well, actually, I've had a question asked in the House of Lords. Yeah, sorry, Ken, what do you say?
Yeah, sorry, Jamie. Do you think, as we're just the five of us on this call and John, should we ask at this point whether the council will reserve some of the money before they give it to the Cowley neighbourhood to provide us with that facilitator, given that was a strong steer from Councillor Constance?
Definitely. I definitely think we should. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? I mean, if we all
can we have some of that money to help facilitate the conversation?
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like an excellent plan to me. Yeah.
I agree too.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So who will do that? Ken, you're the man.
So I'm happy to write the email. What I would like to do is just circulate the email to all of the groups, just to say we're sending this on behalf of all five of us. And Jericho Traders, and if anyone else isn't here, and although it'll have to come from a single email address to make sure that we are all copied in and signatories to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, right. Any other business? I mean, one thing that's come out of this is, there are winners and losers, but we're all winners and losers eventually, unless we get together. So will you do that? And whether Jamie approves or not, I will approach Jan Royale and see what she feels about this and take it from there. But thank you all for your time. Does anyone have anything else they want to contribute? No?
No, it's time for a coffee.
It's been a long morning. Sorry about technical problems.
Bye-bye, everyone. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right, cheers. Bye. Thanks. Run the entitlements, Phil, if we've got them somewhere. And it's all recorded. So there we go.